Hunting and gathering is as old as man. Perhaps that's why, in this modern age, fishing in the ocean strikes such a deep chord in our consciousness. It connects all of us to something authentically human. Because man has the capacity to overwhelm the natural world, for fishing to persist, strong checks and balances are needed. Science-based fisheries management can ensure a future for ocean fisheries. In Oregon, we've blazed a trail to sustainable ocean fisheries. It's a great story we'd like to share with you. So please join us for a tour of Oregon's ocean fisheries. We'll take you out to sea and show you how Oregon seafood products are harvested. And we will introduce you to some of the brave men and women in Oregon's fishing industry. You'll be impressed by their knowledge of the ocean, conservation ethic, and determination to preserve a way of life. There's a lot of information to share. Good news about the health of Oregon's ocean and the transition to sustainability in the fisheries. It's an inspiring story that, until now, has not been told. The transition didn't come easy. It took hard work and sacrifice. Many fishing families and businesses didn't make it through. Many others did. The transition was accelerated in 1996 when the U.S. Congress enacted the Sustainable Fisheries Act. The law ushered in bold changes. On the West Coast, the new fishery management measures worked far better and far faster than anyone imagined. We can be proud of this achievement. It's a compelling chapter of the Oregon story that ranks with the cleanup of the Willamette River, the beach and bottle bills, Oregon's land use program, and the Oregon Salmon Plan.
Well, often we have customers that come into the store that maybe have some misunderstandings about fisheries or really sometimes no understanding at all. And it's a good opportunity for us to talk to them about how to feel really confident about their purchases. We do that by identifying the boats directly to the consumer so that they can know where their fish came from and even go down and meet the fishermen themselves. I think people are just feel comforted in knowing that if they really like seafood and they want to eat seafood, that they can feel good about it. I think that's the most important takeaway thing that I see.
The people that call the office, a lot of them are surprised that there's still lots of fishing going on because they read in the newspaper that, for instance, salmon is closed or something like that, and they equate that with every kind of fishing.
Yeah, we like that.
People think there's no fishing left when it's really that you're not allowed to catch a certain species.
Decisions can be made without good information to back them. Lack of knowledge, is a huge problem. When we hear somebody step up and say, "Wow, I heard our oceans are in horrible shape. They're in trouble." That's lack of knowledge. That's somebody that's not out there, that's not seeing that, and that scares me more than anything. And probably could hurt all of our industries more than the decline of a stock of fish.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm really glad that we're doing this film. This is an opportunity for us to share with each other, with our neighbors, about what's going on in our backyard where we work.
The public deserves to know this remarkable story. These are public resources that belong to all Oregonians. The first people with a special relationship with Oregon's ocean were the tribes of the Oregon country. Many of them developed a lifestyle revolving around resources from the sea. An important theme runs through their history. The customs of the tribes reflect the fact that the size of salmon runs varied tremendously from year to year. Long before Europeans altered freshwater habitats on the west coast, salmon runs fluctuated wildly. Some years, salmon hardly showed up. Other years, salmon flooded coastal rivers. This history informs us the ocean off Oregon has always been a highly dynamic ecosystem. The California current is the driving force. When coupled with prevailing westerly winds, the California current draws nutrient-rich water up from the deep ocean onto the continental shelf, a process known as upwelling. Upwelling supports the production of plankton, the foundation of the food chain. Some years, ocean conditions favor salmon. Other years, other species like West Coast sardines get a boost. The point is, the ocean environment is constantly changing. After the Civil War, Europeans began to settle on the Oregon coast. Before long, salmon canneries lined the banks of most coastal rivers. Because the fishery wasn't managed, salmon runs began to suffer. In the late 1800s, the federal government began to construct jetties that provided access to the ocean. This also sparked the building of a fleet of ocean-going wooden salmon trawlers. Trolling became an effective method to harvest salmon in the ocean. Salmon trolling is a hook and line fishery. Vessels move through the water at about 4 miles per hour, or knots, towing a spread of flashers with barbless hooks. By the 1970s, the salmon fisheries on the West Coast were booming. A network of federal and state hatcheries released millions of coho hatchery salmon into the ocean. For coho salmon, a tipping point was reached in the mid-1990s. Populations plummeted. What happened? A natural shift in ocean conditions was a huge factor. High harvest rates on wild coho, and probably the release of too many hatchery fish, were other factors. Many fishermen were forced out of the salmon fishery. That marked the first major transition in Oregon's fisheries. Today, conservative harvest rates for salmon are in place. Watershed councils and soil and water conservation districts partner with landowners to improve freshwater habitats. Hatchery practices were reformed and modernized to take genetic factors into account. By the late 1990s, ocean conditions for salmon improved. All these factors helped coho salmon runs recover. Looking ahead, we won't witness a return to past practices in the salmon fishery, and that's good. Unfortunately, the long-term outlook for ocean salmon fisheries is clouded for reasons beyond our control.
Salmon fisheries are managed on what's called weak stock management. And that means that it doesn't matter how good everything is doing on all of the runs, on all of the rivers up and down the coast. If you have one stock that is at a trigger level for closures, it closes the whole ocean down for everybody, for all of those rivers, because the fish commingle when they're in the ocean.
Fishermen worked with scientists from Oregon State University, NOAA, and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to establish a program called CRUISE. Through a DNA testing program, tissue and scale samples are taken from individual fish to identify which runs of salmon from which rivers are being caught in the ocean. That's done during the fishing season. By identifying which runs of salmon are being caught at sea, the fishery can be steered away from weaker runs of fish to the more plentiful stocks. Still, salmon are vulnerable because they are anadromous. They emerge from the gravel in rivers, spend their early lives in fresh water, go to sea, and return to fresh water to spawn. That same fascinating life history makes some smelt runs on the west coast vulnerable. So, the salmon runs originating in California in particular are impacted by water management practices, droughts, climate change, impacts of dams, and the loss of freshwater habitats. Thankfully, Oregon's other ocean fisheries face far fewer challenges than salmon. Each year, young albacore tuna between 3 and 5 years old undertake a highly migratory journey around the Pacific Ocean. These remarkable fish can swim up to 50 miles per hour. In the late summer, large schools of young albacore tuna pass close to the Oregon coast. During the young tuna's annual migration, the fish feed voraciously near the surface of the ocean. As a result, these tuna have a higher fat content than older tuna populations caught in the deep waters of the Central Pacific by foreign fishermen. These are heart-friendly omega-3 oils. These younger hook and line caught tuna contain far less mercury than older tunas harvested by foreign fleets, well below US FDA and Canadian standards for mercury. Because albacore are highly migratory, international cooperation is needed to manage the fishery. 2 international commissions provide management frameworks. A segment of the West Coast commercial albacore fleet has been certified sustainable by the Marine Stewardship Council. MSC certification gives consumers independent third-party verification a fishery is sustainable. Many tuna harvested by Oregon's fishermen are sold overseas as a frozen bulk commodity. That's a lost opportunity. Small-scale fish processors have begun featuring Oregon-caught albacore as a specialty product, connecting consumers with the origins of their food so they know it's a quality product and sustainably harvested. That's the wave of the future.